All right, so let's jump back a day. So I actually don't have that page open. So we worked on our school API last week. The new material that we gave on Friday was using the Django REST framework. Now, this is something we didn't go over exhaustively. I know some of you guys were able to kind of read the documentation and figure out how to do some things, especially for the school API, because we had two models that we're working with, as opposed to the wine API where we only had the wine model. But yeah, let's kind of just go through quickly hooking up Django REST framework with our school API, in case that's something you guys were trying to figure out still. And then, yeah, we'll get into the new material after that. So this hopefully shouldn't take much time. As you guys saw on Friday, it takes maybe like 10 or 15 minutes just to hook it up, replace kind of your existing manual serializers and manual views, and just use what Django REST framework has to provide. Before I kind of jump into it, does anyone have any questions about Django REST framework? Did you guys have any challenges? Were you guys able to get through documentation and kind of figure things out that way? I'll take that as a yes. All right. So I have my school API up here. This is, again, what we did last week. I'm just going to go through the process of adding support for Django REST framework and converting what I have here to use Django REST framework. All right, and then maybe we can look at some documentation and kind of see how we can maybe customize things. But yeah, let's get into it. All right, so the first thing I want to do here is install Django REST framework. Actually, I might have done that already. Yeah, so if I wanted to install Django REST framework, I'm just going to do pip install Django REST framework, all one word. Yeah, so I already installed it, but if you want to install it, pip install Django REST framework. So it's a pretty quick install. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to go over to our settings. So school projects, my project folder. In here, we need to add, sorry, what are we doing? Oh yes, for the app. We need to add REST framework to your list of installed apps so that Django can be aware of it. And that's the only thing you need to do in the settings. So that's done. Next, I'm going to go to my serializers, which I have open here. So again, we went through the process of creating manual serializers. So I named mine student serializer manual, and likewise course serializer manual. So yeah, it was a bit of work. We have maybe like 20 lines of code for each of these serializers. Not too difficult, kind of just tedious. But as we saw, we can use Django REST framework, and it becomes all much easier. So let's take advantage of that. Framework, serializers, import model serializer, and then we just need a few lines here. So student serializer. This is going to inherit from model serializer, and then we just need a few fields here. So this is very similar, again, to creating a model form. We need a model to specify, so this would be student. And we need some fields. That'll be a list, so let's include ID. I think my student just had a name. So I have student models. All right, I had fun fact and grade. So let's add that. Okay, and then our course serializers can be pretty darn similar, except for course. And ID name. Right, so we have name, description, and students. And so this many-to-many relationship also provides us a courses field on our student model. So we can include that also. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Courses, and here we have description. And students. All right, so pretty straightforward. Our serializers are done. Our manual ones won't be used. comments here. Okay, so that's checked off, serializers. I guess we have 2 more things to do. We need to do our URLs. So these are the paths that we manually created. Django REST Framework just has a default URL pattern that they follow. So it's slightly different than what we established, and we could look at documentation for that. Let me just get rid of all this. All right, for this, we need to import, I forgot to import some stuff here. So from school API models, we're going to need student and course. Or forget that because we're using model here. And then let's go to our URLs. So here we need to import a few items. We're going to import a router. So that's going to be from REST Framework. Again, it's easy to forget this. So looking off my notes, import default router. Routers. Import default router. And then what else do we need? From school API views, import student view sets and course view sets. So this is something we still need to create, but this will be the 3rd piece. So basically, there's 3 pieces to it. We need to update our serializers, our URLs, and views. And then I guess the one additional step is update your project settings so that you add Django REST Framework as an installed app. All right, so we have our student view set. Now we just got to link up our routes. So we're going to do create a router instance. The default router. Then we're going to register our URLs. So we can do register. And that's going to take in some items here. Student view set, and then we have a base name. All right, we got to do the same for our courses. And then I think we should be pretty much good to go. Course. All right, so we've registered, and then we need to add it to our URL patterns, just like we did here. For our manual way, URL patterns.
So in the sample, it had router register R with the apostrophes. What's the difference in putting students in course?
I believe the R stands for raw, so that certain characters won't be escaped out of here. We could quickly Google that. So R and Python. Yep, so we treat it as a raw string. To see what this answer says. Yeah, so normally in a normal string, backslash will escape some characters. So like if you want a new line, I do \n. So this \n won't actually be printed. That will just be a new line that's generated. But if you go with a raw string, that will actually include \n. So basically, you can't escape out of your string with special characters. But yeah, I guess the example had that. Let's just be consistent there. And then URL patterns, we need to add our URLs. So in this case, let's do router URLs. All right, I think that's all we need to achieve.
I got a question. For using the base name, is that really needed anymore because we're not using templates? Isn't the base name used for routing? Like if you want to route to that particular URL, you could reference the base name in like a template?
That's a good question. Again, I'm just gonna go back to documentation. Let's see. You know, we could try it out and see if we change it and see if that actually breaks anything for us. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, they're not using it here, so maybe it might be superfluous. We could test it out, change it, or remove it and see what happens. I'm just gonna keep it there for now. All right, so this was our views. Again, a lot of code that we wrote for our views, but the drf way makes it way simpler, maybe a little too simple. Drf way. All right, so now we got to use something called view sets, and the view sets kind of just automatically handle the view logic for us. So for that, we need to import view sets from Django, REST framework. And here, what is it? This is view sets, import model view set, and then we had to create our view sets for each of our objects. So we had student view set that we were using. This will inherit from model view set, and we got to provide it 2 items. Query set would be student dot objects dot all, and we need the serializer class. So this will be student serializer. All right, obviously I need to include some items here, so let's not forget that. From school API, we had serializers. And we need models. It looks like from school API models, import students and course. All right, so this will be a copy and paste operation. Course, and course. All right, so I think that's all we need to do. If I forgot some includes, hopefully it'll be easy to fix, but I think I achieved what I wanted. Again, I installed Django REST framework. Secondly, I went to my settings, included as an installed app, REST_framework. And then I went to my serializers. Let's just review. Serializers using the model serializer. So I simply had to specify, I've got my meta class here. I simply had to specify a model and fields, and the serializer will do the magic for me. URLs, we're using something called default router, which will auto-generate the base routes, and then views, which will take care of those actions. All right, so assuming I didn't have any typos, let's try to fire this up. So I'm gonna do Python manage.py run server, and URL patterns is not defined. That makes sense. Okay, so server's up. Hopefully it runs correctly, but we should definitely test it out. Let me bring up Chrome window. There we go. All right, so I had this up before. We're going to go to school API/students. There we go. So this is the data that we had on Friday, where we had Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse. And notice that we have the course IDs listed here. If we wanted to update that, we can actually provide str methods that should take care of, instead of seeing IDs here, we should be able to see the titles. So that's something I didn't include in my models, so I'm going to do that now. Oh, it looks like looks like I already had that. So, all right, let's try changing that. So one way we could do this is by introducing string-related field. So this is where do I want to do that? This would be on the serializer. Here you could add some additional logic. So for courses, I'm actually going to change it to use the str method. So again, this is from documentation, but serializer string related field is what I'm looking for. And this is a many-to-many relationship, so this will need to take in another parameter of many. All right, so we have serializers, string-related field. Oops. All right, so now this is actually going to use my str method. To see that, let's actually add something here. Let's just say course name in caps, and I need this code back here. All right, so I have that. Serializer not defined. That is because of that. All right, so importing serializers. I'm going to change this. Okay, so now I'm using something called string related field. So this, again, should take the str method. So if I refresh here, all right, there we go. So we got acting 102, 101. Why didn't my model? Oh, because I need to do this on my course, not my student. Okay, let me save that. Let's try that again. Refresh. All right, there we go. So notice whatever we put in our str method can show up in our display here. But yeah, so that's just using the string related field on our serializer. Let's talk about routes. So again, our default routes kind of changed, and that's again looking at documentation. If I go to default router, all right, so it gives you this.
Can you go back for just a second?
Absolutely.
The course name is part of what's being displayed. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's using the in my models, I create my dunder string methods. Whatever I put.
I guess what I'm actually asking is course name : is part of the display?
Yep.
Okay. So that's just a side effect of using this. It has to be, I guess I'm not sure what.
Sure. So our models, we have our student model and course models, right? So whatever you put in your dunder string method is what's going to be used if you opt to use this string field. So instead of just showing the...
And that's the string for the entire object in place of the ID.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so you
Took me just a second to wrap my brain around it.
Yeah, whatever you want to put for display purposes in the str method. Using a string field would just kind of replace the ID with that actual string.
Got it.
You could also just use the reverse lookup by using the serial of I think it would be the course serializer. So instead of having to use the string related field, you can actually get the objects from the course and list that instead.
Gotcha. I'm actually not familiar with it. Is it pretty easy to implement?
Yeah. Here, I'll give you an example in the chat.
Okay. We can try doing that, look at doing that. But for our default router, so as we mentioned, our routes are a little different. So when you want to create a new item, we're not actually going to a /new. We're just going back to our base. So when you do a GET request to your base URL, you're going to list all the items. If you actually post to it, we're going to create to it. Again, this is a little different. If we remember our URL patterns from before, we're going to /new when we wanted to post and create a new student. We go to student/new and then post to that URL. So it's a little different now, but we could change it if we wanted to, and that's where custom routers come into play. So if we go back to our documentation, there have all these parameters, but if you wanted to define a custom route, you would do it in this manner. I did this briefly. I'm not sure if there's a way to kind of add on to the existing routes. They're deriving from simple router instead of default routers. That might be one of the things there, but let's see, prefix. Okay, but yeah, we could create a custom route. We could try doing it. Let's just try going about that. So let's add a new file, call it routers.py. In here, I'm gonna import REST framework routers. Import, let's do default router, try that. And then we want to do something called routes. All right, so this is not going to be a full router, but let's just try it. So I'm going to call class, let's call this student router. This will inherit from default router. All right, let's take a look at their example. So simply we need to define routes and define the URLs that we want to go to it. So I'm just going to copy this and modify it. All right, let's get rid of these. All right, so if I wanted to create, again, to mimic what we had manually, I could just create my own URL. So instead of having the prefix here, I'll do /new. And then my mapping, this is going to be for a post. So again, /new is where we want to create our new user. So we're going to post to it. And the action is not going to be listing. It's going to be creating. And so these aren't just magical, terms I'm coming up with. This is from the table. So if we go back to our table, these are the actions that the router are kind of supporting. So we have list, which is again just showing all the items. Create will be creating a new item. Retrieve is like that student detail. Update, as you might imagine, student update. Partial update is again something we've not really done, but this is where patch comes into play. So again, the Django Rust framework is actually relying on get, put, patch, or delete because it's all going to the same URL. Right. So this is again something that we've not done. We've been relying on post for all of our updating actions, but when you're using the Rust framework, you got to use the proper HTTP methods. All right. So I'm just going to try to implement posting to a new URL to create. So that's why I use create in that mappings list. So here I put create base name that I think this doesn't need to change. This should be create. Okay, so let's.
Hey, Ankur, I think it makes a difference that you're using the default router, but the example that you copied and paste from is the simple router.
Okay, we'll go with that. I was thinking I could try the default router.
The default router does all this for you. The simple router, you have to specify.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, I guess my goal is hopefully to override just one of these items, but that might require more research. All right, let's go with simple router. All right, so I have one route defined here. I'm gonna need to define all of them if I actually want all the full functionality. But let's try checking out one of them. So if I do this and refresh, I'm not gonna have. Okay, I got use student router. So let's go back to my URLs. So this is our default router. Let's get a student router here. So include that from school API, routers, import student router. Let's see, student simple router. Should be the same. Apologies, I'm just trying to do this on the fly here. So let's see. All right, let's get register. So let's copy this. Okay, let's see if this actually works. So I've added my student router that just has one URL. I'm appending that to my URL patterns, not replacing it. And again, just look at my routers. All I did was create a new URL that has a /new, and this should be able to handle post to create a new student. Let's see if this works. I'm not 100% sure. So if we go to /new, all right, so notice that we can't do a GET request. So that's what it attempted to do here. So that's where we got a detail not found because /new has no GET support, but we can post to it. So if we wanted to create a new a new student. So let's go with Goofy. I don't know Goofy's last name if he has one. Fun fact, Goofy is really goofy. Does anyone else know more fun facts about Goofy? I sure don't. Let's say he's in grade 7, and we're gonna do a put. Put would update. Why can't I post? All right, I'm gonna try this and not know what's gonna happen. So if we go back to students, All right, didn't that get created? So I was looking for a post. I'm actually not sure why that was a put. Let's see. Puts. All right, something on straight here. Nothing. All right, let's read our docs. So we had a custom router down here. So we have get list. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's a put actually.
Encore?
Yep.
At this point, this is just kind of you customizing it, right? Because you could just post from the /students URL.
Yeah. So I was trying to add a new route so I could actually go. Yeah, I can post from here and create a new student. That should work. So if you want to see that, let's do it. Goofy is really goofy. And he's in 7th grade. We post that. All right, so we got that post, and then let's go back to our students. All right, so now we have all 3 students. But yeah, again, my goal was just to show that we can customize it. So we actually get to this URL, but again, I haven't figured out why this put is here. And in the interest of time, I don't want to take up too much time. So it is possible, again, the key takeaways, you can create custom URLs. You're not tied to what Django REST framework provides you through the default router. So you still have that control. It just requires a little bit more work and obviously more reading of documentation, which I need to do myself. So let's just abandon this thread. And we will find it. I'll try to figure it out. Okay, so that's, again, pretty simple just to get Django REST framework up and running. It took, again, I think 10 or 15 minutes just to convert our existing school API and to use our Django REST framework and still have the same functionality. With that, any questions on Django REST framework, or do you guys have any trouble with school API that, that I didn't encounter or that we want to kind of talk about? Again, a lot of it just comes down to reading documentation. We kind of just said, hey, this is Django REST framework. You know, we didn't really go through all the examples because 1, there's a lot that Django REST framework provides, and 2, kind of want to get just familiar with going through documentation and figuring out how to achieve what you're looking for. Okay, so that was school API. Again, hopefully you guys were able to make your way through documentation and get Django REST framework applied to your school API. Otherwise, there's no questions. Let's take a quick break. Let's take a 6-minute break, and then we're gonna get into the material for today, which is just hooking up your React front end to Django backend.